Hello, you financially inclined individuals. Welcome back to the channel. And I've got to be honest with you, I've been dying to do this one for a long time. Slightly controversial, but hear me out. Why pensions are bad, and more importantly, how they keep you poor. You're going to want to strap in for this one.
The truth shall set you free.
Okay, for all the youngsters out there, and by young I mean anyone under the age of 45, why is it that all the folk are always going on about the pension? You need to save for a pension, you need to save for retirement. This is something that's years away, decades away. This isn't something I've got to worry about right now, is it? Well, actually, they've got a point. See, it's never too late to start planning your financial future. And in actual fact, it is better the earlier you start because of the magic of compound interest. We'll get into that later on in the video. Now, believe it or not, the problem we have here is all because of a guy called Henry Ford. Yeah, that Henry Ford, the guy that started mass producing Ford Model Ts for the world. Now this chap, he paved the way for modern day corporations by creating what was the production line that had never existed in an environment, in an economy of builders, bakers and candlestick makers. And as early as 1914, I think it was, Henry Ford started offering pensions to his employees. Now, like I said, back then, pensions would have been a really attractive option because the economy then was, like I said, bakers, candlestick makers, cobblers, and so on and so forth. Literally entrepreneurs going out and making money themselves. But Henry Ford came in with this new model where he said, right, you trade your time and I'll pay you a wage. And if you do that for your life, then at the end of your working life, so I'll make up a retirement age of, let's say, 65 perhaps, I'll then pay you a pension that you can live on for the rest of your days. Sounds good, right? And it was genius for one or two reasons. One, because it gave Henry Ford the workforce he needed to mass produce cars that became the modern day production lines that we see today. But also, there was a social good from it. Henry Ford wanted his employees to do better, and he genuinely believed that after a lifetime of work, that you should be able to retire, kick back and relax, and live out the rest of your days. Now, Ford is really committed to corporate social responsibility. Yeah, way back in 1914. I mean, today it's a buzzword that corporations are using. He was thinking about this all the way back then. And it wasn't just a case of getting a workforce to work for him so he could churn out these cars one after another and thus paving the way for modern day society and manufacturing processes to become what they have become today. It was an enabler to business, but also for the employees, it gave them an opportunity that after a lifetime of work, that the latter stage of their life, they could genuinely sit back, relax, and live out the rest of their days in relative comfort. Great, right? Not so. Now, there are several reasons why pensions might be bad, and I'm going to allude to that because that's obviously the tone of this video, but let's first look at some reasons why they are good. And by good, I mean, these are the kind of things you might hear from an independent financial advisor. Oh, and disclaimer, nothing in this video is advice. This is just information for you to understand and learn. And if you want to take it further, that's completely up to you. Number one, tax-free growth. Pensions genuinely are a really tax-efficient way to save for retirement. Generally, governments, and I'm talking about UK and the US government here, will give you tax relief on your pension savings. So you can accrue a much larger pension pot without the taxman eroding that savings away. And then when you get to pension retirement age, you've got this big pot of money that you can cash in or buy an annuity, but I'll get to that later. Compound interest. Now, I alluded to this before, and the sage of Omaha, yes, himself, Warren Buffett, called compound interest the ninth wonder of the world. It's literally creating money from nothing. So once you've got an initial investment up front, let's say £100, when that compounds at a rate of 10% per year, at the end of the first year, you'd have £110 in your pot. Now, the interesting thing about compound interest is the next year, that same 10% is being paid on the original, the new amount. So the £110 now compounds a further 10%. Compound interest. You do this over a matter of years and your pension pot really starts to build pace and you really start to accrue huge amounts of money. And the secret to compound interest is time in the investment. The compounding is quite small and low at the beginning, but as soon as you start to get 10, 20, 30 years in, your interest accrued amount starts to get really, really large. Government protection. Now, it's all well and good accruing a huge amount of money in your pension pot, be 100, 2, 3, 4, 500,000 pounds, £1 million plus. But if the underlying company that's looking after that money for you goes under, guess what? Correct. You lose all of your money. Nobody wants that. Oh, the UK government and the US government both have ensured that their citizens have some sort of state backing. Now, it's not a lot, but you are protected by a pension protection fund in each of those countries. They are different, and you can look into that if you need any more information. Death benefits. This is actually a sticking point of mine, what I'm going to get to later on in the not so good parts about pensions. But anyway, pensions do offer a death benefit. So if you've worked your entire life, saved into a pension pot, you come to retirement, you start to claim your pension, fantastic, you've got a pot of, I don't know, £300,000, $300,000, then you die. Your partner or your named beneficiary, once removed, can then claim the rest of that pension for the rest of their lives. Fantastic. Flexibility to a certain degree. So once you reach pension age, you can then take some of the money out in your pension, sometimes in a tax-free lump sum, an amount. It's a percentage. I think it's 25% tax-free in the UK right now. You'd have to check the US one. Or you can then purchase an annuity which will pay you a monthly income for the rest of your life, or until the balance of the pension runs down. But you'll have to take advice on both of those options. Tax-free cash. So I alluded to it before. So once you reach pension age in the UK government, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in the US as well, will allow you to take out a tax-free lump sum from your pot, and you can do with that as you please. So you can go on a cruise, get that sports car you wanted, or even just pay off some debts. Completely up to you. But the point is, it's there. Auto-enrolment. Now, I'm actually for this. There are a large proportion of people that don't save anything for retirement, and then when retirement comes, they find they've got nothing to live on, and then fall into perhaps even below the poverty line. Employers now in the UK and the US are now auto-enrolling employees onto schemes, so they at least have some sort of pension benefit come retirement age. Something I'm actually pro. Government contributions. Now imagine that. You save some money into your pension, and the government will also top up the pension for you. And in some cases, so will the employer. It'll be a percentage, and it depends on how generous your employer is. But if you pay in, 5% of your salary, your employer may match you and pay an additional 5% in, or pay in the UK there's a minimum, and I think it's about 2.5%. Now these figures will change depending on when you're watching this video. Obviously I can't prescribe what's going to happen next year or the year after, but as of today, there is a legal minimum, and I think it's 2.5%. And overall peace of mind. So it's good knowing that if you're saving now, or you started saving when you left education into your 20s, that you've got some money going away, so you don't have to worry that when you are 55, 60, 65, you will have a pot of money to dip into or to use to see out the rest of your days. So it does give you some peace of mind that there's a pot of money there that you can use to fund your retirement. Great. Right. Now let's get into the bad stuff. And for clarity, I'm talking about private pensions, not state pensions now. The retirement age. So you know that vision you've got of laying on a beach, sipping pina coladas, watching the world go by because you've just retired and you're enjoying your pension, right? The only problem is you've looked at the pension and realised actually there's not enough money in there for you to be able to retire. Now you've done everything right. You've listened to the financial advisor. He said pay in this much every month, and by the time you're at retirement age, you'll have enough money in your pot to go and sit on that beach, pay off those debts, or buy the sports car. It's not the case. You're now looking at the pension and there's not enough, and you'll find that you're going to run out of money by the time you're 70. Disaster scenario. And what this means is you either don't draw down the pension or you have to go back to work. They're also pretty inflexible. Once that money's paid into a pension, you can't get that money back. It's locked in until you reach the official pension age. And that's really inflexible. What if, midlife you have a bit of a crisis and you need the cash now? You fully intend on topping that money back up later on in life, but right now you just need a big chunk of cash to solve a problem. And that's one of the other issues with pensions. Global economic downturns. Completely not your fault. It just so happens that at the time you come to claim your pension or to cash it in, we're in the middle of a massive global economic downturn, which means the value of your pension pot has fallen because ultimately all pensions and pension funds are invested in the stock market. So now you can't retire because of global instability. That's not your fault. Lost in translation. So pension jargon is just nuts. And I'm absolutely convinced that they, the institution, the financial world, intentionally make jargon complicated and make things sound more technical than they actually are. What this means, you're almost certainly going to need the help of an independent financial advisor, which also means paying fees. I personally couldn't stand that, so I don't pay into a pension. I don't like the idea of giving over that level of control to somebody else to be in charge of my financial future. And to be honest with you, over the years, it ain't that complicated. Once you understand what the pension is, how it works, you can then take some pretty life-changing decisions that could save you hundreds of thousands of pounds in the long term. The caveat to that is, if you're not sure, really do take some independent financial advice first and make sure that person explains everything to you in detail, and then you take an informed decision. The hidden costs, like total ouch. I think pensions and the hidden costs in pensions are like all-day buffets. You think you're getting this great deal, and then when you come to the drinks, they're extortionate. And it's the same with pensions. It's like free advice up front, and then we'll hit you with fees as soon as you take out the plan. Now, some of the costs involved could be, in fact, no, will be an annual management fee, and this will be a percentage, is likely to be a percentage of the principal sum invested, or a sum per £1,000 invested. Charges for moving your money in, out and around the pension. Now, this does go back to a point earlier on about me saying you're not able to access the money, but you'll have to look at the pension, the product that you're specifically looking at, to see what these charges are, or if at all. Charges for withdrawals. So you may be able to withdraw money from one pension into a SIP, which is a self-invested personal pension, or into an ISA, which is another tax-free savings vehicle, but you'll be charged for this. And I just don't like the idea of you being charged to move your own money. Charges for advice. So you know, when you pick up that phone and you ask some advice, you may be charged for that. Not always, but like I said to you, these funds and institutions and advisors need to make their money somehow, and it's all in charges. Charges for death. Yeah, you heard me right. So even when you die, your beneficiaries may incur an admin charge to claim your pension on your behalf. Again, read the small print. Risk of investment losses. Now, no investment is completely foolproof and riskless. There is risk in everything we do, but the small print and the disclaimers you see is basically a company absolving themselves of any responsibility for losses on your account. The value of your investments can go up as well as down. And I think fundamentally, I don't like the lack of control. Once your money's in that fund, you don't have any control on how it's invested. Yes, you might have a RAG system, red, amber, green. So I'm really aggressive, high growth, small company stocks, or I'm really not aggressive at all. I'm really risk averse, and I just want nice, steady companies with moderate to low growth, but are not going to go bust. The complete comedy of inflation. So inflation is like that friend who comes to the party and just eats all of the snacks immediately and leaves everybody else with nothing. Understand this. Whatever the inflation rate is, and in the UK not so long back, it was 10%, that's the value that your pension is being decreased by. So if your pension pot grows by 5% a year, but inflation is 10%, you're losing 5% a year. And you can't do anything about it because your money is locked away. Of course, you could switch to another fund, but don't forget those fees, moving money from one place to another, charges, and actually that doesn't solve the inflation problem. Scams. Now, I don't know about the US, but in the UK, this is a real problem. Fraudsters pretending to be pension providers, extorting money ultimately out of victims is the best word I can use, and then squandering that money on their lavish lifestyles whilst leaving people who've literally given up their entire life savings away to these people, and they're left completely destitute. This is another risk area for saving into a pension. So here it is. This is literally the number one reason why I don't like pensions, and I think they're bad, and ultimately they keep you poor. They're anti-generational wealth. Yes, for the pedants, when you die, you can pass on the pension to your spouse or your children once. But after that, if you've accrued £1 million pension pot when you're 65 and you start claiming that pension and then you die after a year and in that pot is still £950,000, you pass that £950,000 on to your, in this case, let's just say your wife, okay, partner. They then start claiming and they die a year later and there's £900,000 left in that pot. Where does that £900,000 go? It goes back to the government. And yes, it does go into the pension protection fund, but ultimately the money you've saved all of your life and worked for evaporates. Your family will not see a penny. There is no generational benefit from that. And I just think that is absolutely scandalous. But not to worry, you do have some options. Now, your independent financial advisor may advise or recommend SIPs, self-invested personal pensions, ISAs, which I've mentioned before, general investment accounts like share accounts, insurance bonds, venture capital trusts, equity release from your home. Jargon, jargon, jargon. I'm not going to prescribe which one of these products will work for you, only you know that. But what I will say is that you should speak to a financial advisor first, understand and make sure that meets your financial aims and goals, and if it's going to give some generational wealth. And if it does, fantastic. Now, I'm a firm believer of creating as many income streams as possible and trying to stabilize that income as best possible. Easier said than done. This approach means that when you do reach retirement age, there isn't a sharp drop in income from what would be a traditional salary because your MSI, your multiple streams of income, have continued to pay. Now, what kind of income streams could I create that would do that and allow me to earn without going to work? I've elected to use limited companies for that because they're not humans, they're entities, which means they never die. They are less tax efficient than some of the products we've spoken about before, but ultimately it makes it much easier to pass on that generational wealth and keep the wealth in my family forever. Shares are able to be transferred to different family members with higher inheritance tax thresholds, but ultimately there's just much more options available if you have your wealth in a company. Even better than that is trust funds. Now, this is definitely way above my financial pay grade in terms of understanding. It's a complicated area, and for this you will definitely need advice. But trust funds, that was my count. But trust funds can be a really good option if you really are interested in creating long-term generational wealth. There's a reason why rich folk and royals do this. And after all, look, this is what the wealthy have been doing for centuries. You should really consider it. So you've listened to me harp on for long enough about this, and I hope you've got some value from this video. I've really enjoyed doing it, and I've wanted to share this for a really long time. If you got some value from this, fantastic. Hit the like button. Please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos in the future. Similarly, if there are any questions or comments, put them in the box below and I'll come back to you as soon as I possibly can. And don't forget to check the description box below for loads of links, hints and tips on how you can save money and build wealth. I mean, why not start now? Thanks very much. See you later.